Welcome back. President Trump in California's wildfire disaster zones this weekend, meeting with state officials and firefighters, privately consoling those suffering from this tragedy, while also getting a first-hand look at the devastation left behind. It all comes as the death toll rises to at least 79 people dead. Nearly 1,300 are still unaccounted for. I want to bring in House Intelligence Committee Chairman and California Republican Congressman Devin Nunes. He's coming to us from the World Ag Expo in Tulare, California once again. And Congressman, it's good to see you this morning. Thanks very much for joining us.
It's great to be with you, Maria.
And you are situated between the two fires. Can you tell us, first off, what you're seeing where you are in terms of the air quality, the smoke? I know you're not right there, but yesterday the president did tour the campfire, which is responsible for the majority of these deaths. He was with Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy and some other state officials looking at the damage, where officials there said that it was the fire was moving the distance of a football field a second, the worst fire in California history.
Thanks, Maria, and thanks for asking about that. It is horrendous here in terms of what the fires have done just to our air quality alone. So even though I'm several hours from the major fire, the campfire, you can actually see the smoke in the air. You can smell the smoke. A lot of high school football games and college football games were canceled or delayed all over the state. The campfire hits close to home. I have a cousin that lived in Paradise, him and his wife. Their house is now gone. My uncle had to take a motorhome, a used motorhome, up to Chico, where you now see a lot of people camped out that are living in the town of Chico, which is not far from Paradise. So the tragic part about all of this is, Maria, that years ago we had timber mills all over this state. We used to go up into the forest and we used to take this wood out.
Right.
And I think what American people need to know is that if you don't remove the wood and the brush, eventually it burns. There's only two ways to remove it. Either you forcefully pull it out or it gets set on fire. And so if you don't go up there and do controlled burns, or if you don't bring the timber industry back, these fires are going to become more and more prevalent. And that's why it's very frustrating to hear the left that for years have blocked the access to these forests off. So you no longer build fire breaks. You no longer go up and take the trees that have fallen and remove them. And so what that is that's actually fuel. And once it ignites, it burns really hot and it moves really fast. And then tragic things happen like we have here. And
it's horrible.
This is probably going to be one of the biggest catastrophes in California's history.
Of course, yes, absolutely. So you're saying it is partly policy and the lack of follow-through in terms of cleaning up these forests as anything else as a reason. We don't have the actual reason for why these fires have been set. And you think part of it is this lack of policy?
Well, 100%. Yeah. So if you have a community that you build in California that's either surrounded by forest or surrounded by grasslands, the first thing that should be of utmost priority is to ensure that you have a barrier built around there. And that only happens by making sure that you allow cattle to graze on the grazing land again, and you remove timber that's fallen.
Understood. Let me move on, Congressman, and ask you about your investigation. We have been with you for the entire year following your moves from the Intel Committee in terms of investigating the FBI and the DOJ and this number of people, the small number of people at the top of those agencies who tried to stop Donald Trump and exonerate Hillary Clinton, as you have said many times on this program. Now you've got the Democrats holding the majority in the new Congress in January. What will happen to your investigation?
Well, we largely are done. So a lot of people don't understand that, but we finished our investigation. So we have 3 buckets of information that we want declassified. We now have a 4th bucket that we want declassified. The president has called for 3 of those 4 to be declassified. We sent a list of about 40 names to our Russia task force that Chairman Goodlatte and Chairman Gowdy are heading up. Likely they're not going to get through those names because they just haven't had enough time. But look, this begs an investigation by the Department of Justice. So either the Department of Justice under new leadership can actually go in and investigate these cast of dirty cops, is really what they were, and their connections to the Russians and their connections to the Clinton campaign. Either it's a special counsel or the DOJ has to do that. That's the way that this is going to be solved because, our committee, I'm very proud of the work we've done. We unearthed all of this information. The American people now know that the Trump campaign was unmasking American citizens. They know that many of the Trump campaign people were targeted. They know that they used a dossier that was paid for by the Clinton campaign to go after and use it in a FISA warrant against the campaign. So we're really proud of what we've done. We want the American people to see these 4 buckets of information that need to be declassified, and if the president would do that, it would, I think, give some finality to our investigation.
Well, let's go through that because you're now giving us new information on this 4th bucket, but you want to see the last FISA renewal, which was signed by Rod Rosenstein. You want to see Bruce Orr reports, which are the emails that you want to see from Bruce Orr and his wife and others, and you want to see the exculpatory evidence that was not presented to the FISA court. In other words, evidence that would say there was no collusion between Donald Trump and the Russians, but that actually wasn't presented to the FISA court. What is this 4th bucket, and am I right about the first 3?
Yeah, so the first 3, you're right on. We've been calling for those for many months. The president actually directed them to be done. And then you had Rod Rosenstein, who convened a meeting to stop that and get that kicked to the IG. But that's not a workable solution. We have let the White House know that that's not going to work. That will just bury this, and none of it will ever be declassified. The new 4th bucket that we're asking actually to be declassified now is for months. We have been reviewing emails between FBI and DOJ and others that clearly show that they knew about information that should have been presented to the FISA court. So it is real evidence that people within the FBI withheld evidence from the FISA court. Now, these are classified, and they need to be declassified. We have been asking, this went to the highest levels, even above myself. It went as high as the Speaker. The Speaker has been requesting the Department of Justice to give us these emails, to make as many public as possible. Yeah. And still, even though we know what's in those emails, a lot of them are still redacted. Well, so they're still refusing to give Congress, even in a classified setting, this information.
I asked David Cicilline about this last week. He, of course, is a Democrat congressman on the Judiciary Committee, and he's the co-chair of the Democratic Policy and Communications Committee, so he's in leadership. Here's what he said about the FISA court. We know that there was massive abuse to the FISA court when information was not given to the FISA court about the Democrats and Hillary Clinton paying for the dossier, et cetera. There has been this investigation in the Judiciary Committee, your committee, as you know. Bob Goodlatte leading the investigation of Andrew McCabe, Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, Bruce Orr. Are you going to drop that investigation now, or are you going to pursue the truth there?
Well, let me correct you, Maria. There has not been massive abuse in the FISA court. There's no evidence of any abuse whatsoever.
Are you saying that they did not withhold information? Did they not withhold information to the FISA judge in terms of who paid for the dossier? Is that what you're saying?
Abuse of the FISA court. Absolutely no abuse of the FISA court.
Wow. He was pretty adamant there.
Yeah. Yeah, so look, they've been in denial for a long time. Their party was colluding directly with Russians. Their entire party in the Clinton campaign should be investigated, because if you're going to investigate, if you're going to open up a secret investigation on the Trump campaign when you had no evidence into them colluding with the Russians, when you, in fact, the FBI used the evidence that the Clinton campaign paid for that was coming directly from Russians. So the very thing Trump campaign was investigated for, they did. So I assume maybe there is no FISA abuse in their own mind, because they think it's okay. They think as long as the Democrats are the ones that are using secret courts to spy on their political opponents, then it's okay. If that's the way people want it in America, I don't think that is, but clearly that's what the Democrats think it should be.
I want to ask you about working with Adam Schiff when we come back. Let's take a short break. You also had a chance to interview Rod Rosenstein, and then you didn't. So I want to know what happened there. Stay with us. Devin Nunes, more right after this. Let me ask you about working with the new leadership now. Adam Schiff will likely take over as the chairman of the Intel Committee, right? We've heard what Adam Schiff says. He doesn't agree or believe many of the things that you've been investigating. How will the next 2 years work out with the two of you working together?
Well, I'm actually looking forward to our first open hearing, because for 2 years now, the Democrats on the committee and all through Congress have been saying that they have more than circumstantial evidence that the Trump campaign colluded with Russians. More than. So at the first open hearing that we're going to have, I'm looking forward to them finally releasing this information because we know that the only thing that hasn't leaked is this information about the Trump campaign colluding with Russians. So they've promised it. They now have the majority, so finally, maybe now they'll present their evidence.
Well, you've already done the investigation, and you've found no evidence of any collusion with the Trump campaign. We know that, but you had an opportunity to
right. But at some point, though, at some point, Maria, I just want to say that you know, you don't just get away with 2 years repeating the same garbage over and over again, essentially chasing Russian ghosts in the closet, infuriating the American people. There's so many Americans out there whose minds have been poisoned, who believe that the Trump campaign actually did collude with Russians because they've had dishonest politicians saying such. Now, look, they weaponized this. They used it for crowdfunding, where you had all of these millions of Americans who sent money all over the country to districts they didn't even live in to actually attack Republicans.
Right.
That happened in dozens and dozens of districts. So look, at the end of the day, they have a responsibility now. They're in charge. Where's their evidence?
Well, and let's not forget the media really driving the bus on that, because the media has been also, you know, the loudspeaker for this idea of collusion when there wasn't any. But real quick, my final question here, Congressman, is Rod Rosenstein. You had an opportunity to interview him, and now you're not. If you don't interview him in the next 5 weeks, you're not going to interview him. Shouldn't you have done that interview so that the American people could have actually seen what took place and got answers from him?
Well, the task force attempted to interview him, and he changed the terms of the interview. So Rod Rosenstein, as the Deputy Attorney General, does not get to dictate to Congress what or how an interview will be conducted. So it's a lot like James Comey wanting to do one in public. Rosenstein wants to do one in public. Look, this is all a scheme for them to hide from answering the tough questions. See, if you go out in public,
right,
all they'll say is, "Oh, that's classified," or "Oh, I can't answer that."
That makes sense.
But the reality is, look, with Comey, Rosenstein, et cetera, these guys need to be held accountable by a special counsel or a new DOJ. Thanks, Maria.
Good to see you, Congressman. Thank you so much.